Right folks, welcome to Ghost Stories. We're about to get into it. We're going to tell you what happened on today's journey into Kilmainham Jail. What a story that we're going to tell you. Very interesting stuff. Take a look at some of the side photos that we're putting up right here. You can see Caroline and all different photographs that we took during the trip in Kilmainham Jail. We're going to talk about different things that people don't know in relation to Kilmainham Jail, and the staff in Kilmainham Jail only want to tell you what they were told to tell you. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of blah 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 in relation to this, but you're not allowed to record it. You're not allowed to do anything like that with social media. Only photographs only. So it's very hard for us to try and deliver a story in relation to Kilmainham Jail that holds such great history and knowledge of the place. They're only going to tell you what they want to tell you. So yeah, very hard. Very hard to do a paranormal investigation. We had the Paratex app in our pocket. It went cracked. People were looking at us very strange with the voices coming out of our pocket. We got some fantastic results in it. We couldn't get the cameras, but you can hear it in the audio in the background when you see us walking around. We're going to show you a few different clips as we go along. I'll be bobbing in and bobbing out, explaining to you about different stories about the place. So yeah, so it's a very interesting place. Put the tea on and we'll show you bits of clips that we did do, and we'll show you other clips of OPW staff did as well in lockdown in relation to COVID-19. That's the only good thing about it. That's the only good thing that they've done. If you're looking for a guided tour, well, you'll be quicker drinking a cup of tea. It's that fast. So anyway, enough of me talking. Let's get into some of these photographs and tell you what's going on in Kilmainham Jail. Is it haunted? 100% it is haunted. Okay, let's roll on. Right, there's so much to unfold here, but let's get into this bitting first. The next clip that you're about to watch now is a little cell door that people can go in, open up the little slot and look in, and that's what the guards on duty, on the night duty or the day duty, looking after the men and the women in the cells, would have seen roughly what they would see looking through the spy law. Take a look at this. I thought it was very interesting, and then we're going to get into more into the deeper side of it. Yeah, I thought that was the guards at the time would be closing like this, right? And then the guards would come along and check and see what they're at, and then the guards would look in and say, "Hey, what are you at? Come here. Do you want your dinner?" See? Okay, so you're watching clips. Yeah, come on. Talk to you through it. It's a pity that people couldn't public get into Kilmainham Jail and get into the read-through of the whole history of the place. When I went into this place, Charles, they weren't allowed to just let us record. Robert Emmett. Just photographs, no recording at all, which is wrong because they want to tell you the history, what they were told to tell the people, the public, but really the truth of this place starts well before 1916. It's sad, this place is really dark. It goes way back before 1916. The way the government ran Kilmainham Jail was brutal. You might be watching it and saying, "Oh, I'm going to take a trip up to Kilmainham Jail." Yeah, do. OPW will give you a free guided tour, but they'll tell you only what they want to tell you. They won't show you the locations about the whole lot of the place. They'll only show you what they were told to show you. There's so many different locations. The history is so dark. Like, it's simple. Back in its time when Ireland were back in the famine years and the whole country was starving with the potato blight and all that, the women of Ireland had no money. So they went out in the streets and they prostituted in the streets. They were arrested for their offence and they were banged into Kilmainham Jail and they did their time and let out again, and they weren't soon let out when they were back in again. There was hundreds of women. Actually, at one stage, there was more women in that jail than men. That's a fact. There was young boys arrested for doing petty crimes. There were young boys murdered. The women, as it says, they were raped and murdered as well. There was men that committed suicide themselves. There's women that committed suicide themselves. The jails back in them times were so overcrowded and overflooded that the people used to die in there from other diseases and everything. They were lying in beds of hay, no oxygen. They weren't getting fed and everything. They were firing families of 8 or 9 into a cell and forgotten about. Maybe one meal every few days. These are stories that they don't tell you. The government were completely wrong back in this time. Killing off 50% of the population in Ireland that time. Absolutely wrong. But they bring it into the 1916s and the revolutions and all that crack. They don't tell you some of the things that happened in there. A lot of things that happened in there were very dark indeed. And people should be entitled to go in and get a good right guided tour. They're only going to tell you what they want to tell you. Here's another fact for you. The Name of the Father. You've seen the film about the Irish Republican Army, the IRA. That film was actually created in Kilmainham Jail. If you don't believe me, take a look at this. And there's other films created in there as well. It's sad, a very, very, very sad place. I wish I could go in there and do a spirit box session myself and Caroline, but unfortunately we couldn't. We're watched 24/7. But I give it one good thumbs up. The OPW, one of the men in charge of the place, did a few videos on lockdown in relation to COVID-19 to entice the people to come back to Kilmainham Jail for a guided tour. I wish they could go where you showed us. So take a look at his guided tours and we'll be back in a few minutes. Right, before I move on to the next bit of the video, I want to bring to your attention as well that a lot of the photographs you see, there's little notes and there's little letters and there's bits of collars from shirts and there's bits of clothing and there's poems and there's letters written on each item. They're displayed in the museum. A lot of them clothings and bits and pieces are left is where the woman or the man, before they were hanged or before they were brought to their death, the only way that they had to be able to send a message back to the loved one was writing on the collars or vests or t-shirts or bits of notebooks or whatever. You can see them up there. They're all there and they're all in the museum. Is where the loved one, when they came to retract their body, they were able to bring home their belongings and they were able to see the little notes that they were left to them. Take a look at this little clip next. It is where Kilmainham Jail have made a fortune over the years as well in relation to films that have been made in relation to the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, in the Name of the Father. Here's a little clip. Take a look at that if you don't believe me.
Cheerio, lads! Take your voice down, quickly! Say hello to the big world for me, Charlie. Bye-bye.
Regis 113 going up to number 2. On the way up, Governor.
Of our release maker, we must act as if the Republic is a fact.
Right, there is some clips in relation to Kilmainham Jail, making a load of films in relation to Irish Republic, IRA, and they can say they never made any money. They made a fortune in that place. So that's why I would say they should open that place to the public. It being better guided tours, and get really down into the history. That's what they should do. Right, talking about history, let me show you now what OPW did in relation to COVID-19 restrictions, and they did a great job of giving guided tours on social media, showing people the history of Kilmainham Jail in their own way. which they should do in their guided tours. So anyway, take a look at it and we'll finish it off then after that.
Patrick Pearse, executed in Kilmainham Jail, 3rd of May 1916. This poem was written by Pearse on the 2nd or 3rd of May in Kilmainham Jail. The Wayfarer. The beauty of the world hath made me sad, this beauty that will pass. Sometimes my heart hath shaken with great joy to see a leaping squirrel in a tree, or a red ladybird upon a stalk, or little rabbits in a field at evening lit by a slanting sun, or some green hill where shadows drifted by, some quiet hill where mountainy men hath sown and soon would reap, near to the gate of heaven, or children with bare feet upon the sands of some ebbed sea, or playing on the streets of little towns in Connaught. Things young and happy. And then my heart had told me, these will pass and change, will die and be no more. Things bright and green, things young and happy. And I have gone upon my way, sorrowful. Hello and welcome back to Kilmainham Jail on Lockdown. This is another one of our videos and we are once again up here on the Coming Among corridor at the very top of the West Wing, and we are going to go into this cell just ahead of us. So I'm just going to bring the torch with me. So we saw some very spectacular graffiti in those other cells, so you may be wondering why I've brought you in here until you see. If you turn the corner, there's a whole other corridor. This part of the jail we think was added in the kind of second half of the 19th century, probably some kind of an infirmary or a hospital. You can see the cells are much smaller here, much narrower than in the rest of the jail. Probably designed to isolate sick prisoners. They're very concerned about disease in the jail and always very anxious to separate out sick prisoners. I suppose something that's very relevant to us at the moment. There aren't any major historical associations really that we know of with these cells, but it is just kind of slightly unusual, perhaps one of the creepier parts of the jail, to be honest. And then at the very end we come to this spiral staircase, and originally in the 18th century there would have been at each corner one of these spiral staircases, and they were connected with particular corridors, which meant that particular types of prisoner could be brought to their own yard without crossing over or having any interaction with the rest of the building. So that would bring you on to the first floor, the door through to it there. We'll just continue on down here. Luckily there's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And it actually brings us out here into one of the yards of the jail. For those of you who saw the video of the Protestant chapel, that's the back of the Catholic chapel, and you can see here that walkway which brings you through to the front building of the jail. It's known as Hangman's Walk or Dead Man's Walk because that's where prisoners would have been brought along to be publicly executed. And then just over here then you have the famous escape gate where 3 of the prisoners escaped during the War of Independence. So that's it for now. Stay safe in the meantime. Con Colbert executed, Kilmainham Jail, 8th of May 1916. child of the 31st of May 1916 prompted Father Augustine to write the following day to the editor of that paper. To the editor, Evening Herald, Dublin, June 1st, 1916. Dear Sir, in last evening's issue of your paper, towards the end of the second news column of the front page, under the heading Last Moments of Volunteer Leader, it is stated that Cornelius Colbert died joking the men who were preparing him for death. It is also asserted that when one of the soldiers was fixing the white cloth on his breast to indicate his heart, he told them his heart was far away at the moment. This version is quite inaccurate and fanciful, and I owe it to his memory to give the true one. There was no joking, not even the semblance of it. Poor Colbert was far too beautiful and too reverend a character to joke with anyone in such a solemn hour. I know very well where his heart was then. It was very near to God and to the friends he loved. What really happened was this. While my left arm linked the prisoner's right, and while I was whispering something in his ear, a soldier approached to fit a bit of paper on his breast. While this was being done, he looked down and, addressing the soldier in a perfectly cool and natural way, said, "Wouldn't it be better to pin it up higher, nearer the heart?" The soldier said something in reply and then added, "Give me your hand now." The prisoner seemed confused and extended his left hand. "Not that," said the soldier, "but the right." The right was accordingly extended, and having shaken it warmly, the kindly, human-hearted soldier proceeded to bind gently the prisoner's hands behind his back, and afterwards blindfolded him. Some minutes later, my arm still linked in his, and accompanied by another priest, we entered the dark corridor leading to the yard, and his lips moving in prayer, the brave lad went forth to die. Father Augustine. Thomas Clark, executed in Kilmainham Jail, 3rd of May 1916. Clark was tried by court-martial in Richmond Barracks on the morning of Tuesday, 2nd of May. That evening he was transferred to Kilmainham. At that time, Mrs. Clark was a prisoner in Dublin Castle. She was brought from there after midnight under military escort to pay a farewell visit to her husband before his execution. Describing her visit, she states, she spent an hour with her husband in his cell, that all during the interview, a soldier holding a candle in a jam jar was in the cell with them, that her husband condemned MacNeill's action, a continuation of what he said to her about MacNeill on his return from the meeting in Liberty Hall on Easter Sunday, the meeting of the military council, that her husband described the court-martial as a farce and told her he had made no speech from the dock or anything like that. He was relieved, he told her, that he was to be executed, his one dread being that he would be sent to prison again. He was in the most exalted frame of mind. He entrusted to her a message to the Irish people. The message was circulated on an in memoriam card in 1917. Message to the Irish people, 3rd of May, 1916. I and my fellow signatories believe that we have struck the first successful blow for freedom. The next blow, which we have no doubt Ireland will strike, will win through. In this belief we die happy. Thomas J. Clark, Kilmainham Jail, 3rd of May, 1916. James Connolly, executed, Kilmainham Jail, 12th of May, 1916. Connolly was visited in Dublin Castle again by his wife and daughter Nora in the early hours of the morning of the 12th of May. We were awakened at about 1 o'clock in the morning. There was an army lorry at the door, and a British officer told us that the prisoner James Connolly wished to see his wife and eldest daughter. Mama had an idea he wasn't well, that he had taken a turn for the worse. But it jumped to my mind immediately. All the signatories of the proclamation had been shot except Papa and Sean McDermott. I immediately said to myself, Papa is going to be shot. Anyway, we got ready. We went down and were taken in the army lorry right through town. We were staying in William O'Brien's house. It was an awfully queer, eerie trip. There was still a horrible smell of burning in O'Connell Street. There was a curfew and not a soul to be seen, not even a soldier, until we came to the bridge. There were a number of them there. When we were shown in, Papa said, "Well, Lily, I suppose you know what this means." She said, "Oh no, Jim, oh no." And he said, "Yes, lovey." And then Mama broke down sobbing with her head on the bed. Papa said, "I fell asleep for the first time tonight, and they wakened me up at 11 and told me I was to die at dawn." Mama said, "Oh no," again, and then crying bitterly. "But your beautiful life, Jim, your beautiful life." And he said, "Wasn't it a full life, Lily? And isn't this a good end?" And she still cried, and he said, "Look, Lily, please don't cry. You will unman me." So she tried to control herself. I was trying to control myself too. Then Papa said to me, "Put your hand down on the bed." So I put it down on the bed, and he said, "That's a copy of my statement to the court-martial. Try and get it out." The piece of paper was folded up very tightly, very small. So I took it anyway. And we stayed there talking of little things. He was trying to plan a life for us after he'd be gone. One thing he said to Mama I remember: "The socialists will never understand why I am here. They will all forget I am an Irishman." And then they told us that time was up and that we'd have to go. He was to be shot at dawn. So Mama, we couldn't get Mama away from the bed, and the nurse had to come and help her away. And I went to the door, and then I went back again to him, and that was the last I saw of him. James Connolly was executed in Kilmainham Jail on the 12th of May 1916. The Catholic Bulletin quotes the surgeon who attended him as having asked Connolly if, at the moment of his execution, he would pray for him and for those who were about to shoot him. And Connolly as having replied, "Yes, sir, I'll pray for all brave men who do their duty according to their lights." Mr. Plunkett executed Kilmainham Jail, 4th of May 1916. Arrangements were in fact made for Plunkett and Grace Gifford to be married. They were married on the night of the 3rd of May in Kilmainham, Plunkett having been transferred there sometime that day. John Brennan, or Mrs. Sidney Cesira Nee Gifford, has given the following account of her sister's wedding. Joe had been engaged to Grace since December, and they were to be married on Easter Sunday. MacNeill's orders countermanded not only the rising but also the wedding, for Joe was so involved in military council affairs that morning that he had time for nothing else. Grace and he agreed that if he were arrested, she would marry him in prison. At dawn on Wednesday, the 3rd of May 1916, Grace's brother-in-law, Thomas MacDonagh, had been executed in Kilmainham. At 6 o'clock that evening, she was summoned to the jail. For 2 hours, she walked up and down alone in a prison yard, while Joe, she was told, waited in a cell. At 8 o'clock, she was taken to the prison chapel, and as she entered, her fiancé was led by a party of soldiers with fixed bayonets. The soldiers remained in the chapel while at the altar Father Eugene McCarthy, the prison chaplain, read the marriage service by the light of a candle, the gas supply having failed. 2 soldier witnesses shifted their rifles from hand to hand as they assisted at the ceremony. Immediately afterwards, the newly married couple were separated. Grace was taken to lodgings found for her by Father McCarthy in Thomas Street, and Joe was escorted back to his cell. They met only once again. Grace was brought to the jail from Thomas Street in the early hours of Thursday morning. Soldiers with fixed bayonets stood by while she spoke to her husband in his cell. "Your 10 minutes are up," said the officer in charge, glancing at his watch, and they parted forever. Hello, and welcome to another one of our Kilmainham Jail on lockdown videos. So, just to orientate yourself a little bit, we're here on the 1916 corridor, but we're heading upstairs to a corridor that we refer to as the Coming On corridor because of the very beautiful and delicate graffiti that survives up there. This part of the building, as usual on these tours, is not on the normal guided tour of Kilmainham Jail. However, while other parts we have plans to allow access to the public. With this part, access is quite restricted, and you'll see why when we go into the cells, because it has some of the most important and delicate graffiti in the jail surviving from the Civil War, mostly done by female prisoners. There were kind of two waves of women prisoners here during the Civil War. First in February 1923, they were moved out in May, and then they returned here in around kind of June, July of 23. But I'm just going to head into this cell. This is the cell of a woman called Cecilia Gallagher. Cecilia Gallagher was born Cecilia Saunders in Cork City, and interestingly, she was here on St. Swithin's Day. And as some of you know, on St. Swithin's Day, the folk tradition is that if it rains on St. Swithin's Day, it'll be rainy for the next 40 days. And if it's sunny, it'll be sunny for the next 40 days. So you can see here, July 15th, 1923, wet. And you can't argue with the science, because if you look further down, rain, 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 early showers, raining, underlined, rain, thunder, thunder, rain. And you can see she recorded the whole way along into August. Rain, rain. I finished on the 24th by describing it as being wet. So it was obviously not a great summer that the women were here in 1923. But I always think it's quite interesting, this decision to by Cecilia Gallagher to record the weather, because of course the one thing that changes in the monotony of prison is the weather. Cecilia Gallagher was arrested mostly because of her husband, Frank Gallagher, who was a very prominent member of Sinn Féin, a very prominent Republican, and took a very strong anti-treaty stance. And it was for that reason, effectively, that she was arrested. She wasn't actually involved in Commonwealth or Sinn Féin, really, or any of the other major political movements, though she did say that the longer she was in prison, the more radical she became. So that's it for today. We're going to do another video later on in the week about another one of the cells up here on the Kilmainham corridor.
Right folks, that is it. That's our story of Kilmainham Jail. We hope you enjoyed it. Some great storylines in relation to OPW's reviews in lockdown in relation to COVID-19. That's what they should be doing. They should be taking people to the cells, the old wings, the east wings, the west wings, and tell some stories. And people will enjoy it more, get them into the buildings, deeper into the stories, which I said in the beginning of this video. Big double thanks to OPW for telling them stories in relation to lockdown. But big double thanks up. It's a pity that I couldn't get in with the spirit boxes and get into them places and show you some of the fantastic locations where we can communicate with spirits that have passed and still walk the corridors of Kilmainham Jail. So until our next adventure, it's goodbye from me, it's goodbye from Caroline, and we hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, give us a big thumbs up, and if you don't like it, give us another thumbs up. Doesn't bother me anyway. So until our next ghostly adventure, we see you in the next one. Slán go fóill. Bye bye for now.